Alright, as you can see, this game is called MirrorMoon EP, and I've seen a lot of sort of first impressions videos of it, but I don't feel like most of those or the reviews I've seen have really covered the issues that I have with the game. So that's what I'm going to do. Alright, when you first start, you load in here and you have your ship's cockpit, which the ship is pretty non-existent. But that's not a problem. This is all goes with the nice aesthetic of the game, which is obviously the main draw. And what you're doing is you find a planet that hasn't been explored, and you have your cartridge here. You have to have it over here to jump to the planet. And you have your fuel over here, and you can choose how much you consume, which dictates how quickly you actually get to the planet, because the travel is sort of real time, which is kind of frustrating. It's like a Facebook game without the monetization aspect of it. But so you find your planet and you kick over. And this is going to be a fairly short trip. It's about 40 seconds. I've had them go 18 minutes before. Because once the fuel gets down so low, it takes longer, and I'm not sure exactly how it replenishes other than maybe over time, but it's kind of a frustrating mechanic. And then sometimes you land on a planet, and which could very well happen here. It happened 4 times in a row, and there is no puzzle. It's just you walk to the orb and you're done. So then when you get there, you have your floppy here, which side A is where you start. It's the tutorial planet, basically. And then you have side B, which is everything else. And you load in. And you can see the navigations through the mirror moon up there. And when it's eclipsing the sun, it's one planet, and when it's not, it's something else. And you can't look up or down in the game. You can use A and D to look left and right, and W and S to go forward and back, but the mouse doesn't do anything until you get a specific attachment for your gun, which for some reason isn't visible for me right now, which is the first time that's happened. But essentially all of the puzzles in this game are navigational puzzles. They're not very challenging usually. They're not very interesting usually, which is a pretty big letdown considering how interesting the game looked and the fact that everyone was getting frustrated by how hard it is. In reality, the difficulty is in just figuring the game out because it's so minimal. And once you get that figured out, which doesn't take too long, honestly, if you just do it. But once you get it figured out, there's no real challenge past that. And so you just go around the planet like this. You're looking for buildings or structures which are translucent, and they'll have an attachment for your gun in them, or the completion orb, which seems to happen more often than not, that the only puzzle is walking to a building to touch an orb and go back to your spaceship. And of course the frustration is that everything is so sparse. There's nothing to really tell you on most of the planets where you are unless you can see the moon. And that's part of the game design, but at the same time it's slightly annoying. Okay, and you can see on the moon somewhere there are little sort of pylon looking things. But of course, how do you tell where that is? Here they are. And we activated them, and now there's a chance that the moon will show a new building, and it does. But again, where is that building? And that's the whole sort of mechanic behind MirrorMoon. Where is that building? And now we have an eclipse because this moon is orbiting. They don't all actually orbit. Sometimes they'll just sit in front of the sun. And when it orbits, it changes the planet, so you could technically walk past your building that you're looking for. And never know. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's my fault more than the game's fault that it feels this way, but because what I'm doing is, I guess, kind of a brute force way of doing it rather than analyzing the moon. But as far as I can tell, you can't really figure it out based on what you're seeing from the moon. On the eclipse planet, it shows you where you are, if you can see that point on the moon, but on the non-eclipse planet, it doesn't. So you're left to wonder, and here it is. And of course, puzzle complete. And that's the gameplay of MirrorMoon. And earlier I stumbled into, I don't know how many of these in a row. We'll go here. I believe this is one of the just walk a few steps forward planets, and this was the third one I walked into. But as you can see, this is a 4-minute journey. And you might think, oh, 4 minutes, something else is going to be going on, or the time will speed up, but it doesn't. It'll take 4 minutes. You can't do anything in the 4 minutes unless you want to play with the lights, or Alt-Tab out, or just go AFK. But that's where I get the Facebook comparison. The whole, your energy will renew in, that feels like the fuel system, and this time system, it's going to take you 4 minutes to build the chicken coop. So there you go. So we'll wait for that. Here we are. We flip our cartridge over, drop the floppy in, and what's that? Completion orb. And so far I've come across several planets like that, and you know, I've read the developers' comments about why they have stuff like that. It's because you have to have lame stuff to make other stuff seem better, basically. But it's just frustrating when you spend 12 minutes waiting to get to a planet, and then that is the puzzle that's waiting for you. And it's not like most of the other planets have anything better than that. There's a building somewhere with a completion orb in it. You find it, you walk to it, you're done. And that seems like that's what MirrorMoon has to offer. And I really like the aesthetic. I like the effort that was put into making things feel mechanical. But really, it's kind of underwhelming considering how everyone talked about how great these abstract puzzles were and how frustrated people were trying to figure it out. But as far as I can see, the only frustration really comes from, in terms of difficulty, comes from that first planet and trying to figure the game out, which shouldn't take too long. It only took a few minutes for me. But past that, it's all walk to building, get completion orb, or collect parts to your gun, walk to building, get completion orb. And none of it's very interesting, none of it's fun. And this whole fuel thing is, that's another annoying thing, not being able to look up and down. But there is my little half rant about MirrorMoon, which is a game that I wanted to love, but I just didn't.